Uh-oh, I'm in trouble.
This is an island surrounded by water, big water, ocean water. Trust me, I'm like a smart person. I'm very consistent. I'm a very stable genius. I had the best words. Tolerate it. I know words. Mike Pounds. I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges of the investigation. But there's no better word than stupid. Anonymous, really anonymous. I'm very highly educated. One of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water. I had the best words. God bless the United States.
Around the nation, TYT Nation, welcome to the show. In Police State America, yes, we have entered a nightmare scenario. So, wonderful. We have a moron as president, and he is exerting all sorts of power that the Democrats gave him. Way to go, guys. Appreciate it. Resistance. Nailed it. Freaking nailed it, guys. Awesome. So, yes, we're going to talk about gassing peaceful protesters. We're going to talk about Donald Trump's photo op at the church. And we've got one especially mad priest. We'll talk about that. We have the independent autopsy on George Floyd. So I know that came out yesterday. We kind of already know this, but it's a confirmation of what we have been talking about. Because understand there's two different narratives out there. There's two different autopsies, I should say. One done by Hennepin County, the medical examiner there, and another one that was independent. So we're going to talk about that. We have white nationalists getting caught impersonating anti-fascists. So you got the pro-fa versus the antifa. And, of course, that's where we're at today. And then we're going to go and switch gears away from that for the final story. We've got a woman who is supposed to get paid leave because she got coronavirus. And her company's like, no, you don't. And we're going to talk about how, even though that there was legislation that was passed to make sure that people who have coronavirus get paid leave, why she will still not get paid leave. Why she's still going to get screwed over in the system that we have. Because America. Awesome. Fun times. All right. Crazy day in America, right? Crazy day, crazy week. Insane last 4 years, roughly. So let's get to it, huh? All right. And before I do, patreon.com/TYTNation. That's the only way that we can stay on the air. So it's really important. Thank you to the patrons that have paid in order to keep us afloat, sustainable through all of these times, right? So we're only here because of you guys. And so, thank you for one. And we continue to always need your guys' help in order to continue to stay on the air as well as grow. And so thank you, patreon.com/TWDNation, or channel memberships as well. merchandise, all that stuff. So, yeah, you guys know the drill. All right. That said, let's move in. President Donald Trump yesterday had police gas peaceful protesters in order to get a photo op. Now, this is following, of course, an incredibly ominous speech from the Rose Garden, where the president, of course, addressed some of the protests around the country. So I want to give you some of what he said. All right. So he said, "We cannot allow the righteous cries and peaceful protesters to be drowned out by an angry mob. The biggest victims of the rioting are peace-loving citizens in the poorest communities. And as their president, I will fight to keep them safe. I will fight to protect you." Now, I'm giving you that part because there's a lot. This speech was fairly large. I'm not going to give you the whole thing. But I stress these points based on what happens next, right? Or in the timeline of things, actually what happened before he gave the speech. Now, he said, "I am your president of law and order and an ally of all peaceful protesters." Well, to be fair, that's only if you are holding an AR-15 and a MAGA hat. He continues by saying, "Today I've strongly recommended to every governor to deploy the National Guard in sufficient numbers that we dominate the streets." So we are essentially martial law, right? In its own way. So bring out the National Guard, he says. Have it police all the streets. Great. Fantastic. Mayors and governors must establish an overwhelming law enforcement presence until the violence has been quelled. You remember when right-wingers thought that President Obama was going to do something like this? And we're like, you guys are crazy. No, he'd never do something like this. And then he didn't. But now we have Donald Trump that is actually doing that. Come on, man. You're kidding. All right, no. He continues. I'm also taking, hold on. He said, "If a city or state refuses to call in the National Guard, then I will deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them." He says, "I'm going to unilaterally send in the troops." Insane. He said, "I am also taking swift and decisive action to protect our great capital, Washington, D.C. What happened in this city last night was a total disgrace. As we speak, I am dispatching thousands and thousands of heavily armed soldiers, military personnel, and law enforcement officers to stop the rioting, looting, vandalism, assaults, and the wanton destruction of property." So, okay. He says, I stand with the peaceful protesters, but I'm sending in the troops, right? So it's a bit of a dichotomy, right? So now I give you all that stuff. Again, this is what he actually said. So I'm honest with you about that. He says, I'm an ally of all peaceful protesters, unless, of course, they're blocking his way to get to a photo op, as you're about to see. Because right before Trump was making his speech, you had officers literally charging peaceful demonstrators and going after them, launching tear gas and using rubber bullets, attacking them. They even went after the press. In fact, there was an Australian camera crew that was reporting. And this is actually from their feed. Take a look.
You're outside the White House where Donald Trump is about to speak. It's getting a bit tense.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. We've just had to run about a block as police moved in. We've been fired at with rubber bullets. My cameraman has been hit. We've also seen tear gas being used. Here we go. They're moving through again. This is exactly what it looks like. Exactly what it looks like. We're just staying safely.
Oh. Whoa. Oh.
Amelia, can you hear us?
Amelia, are you okay? Or your cameraman? Hello, Amelia. The police just charged at Amelia and our 7 News cameraman there, and looks like a policeman just punched our cameraman.
Which is interesting because they're not discriminating between protesters and the media here. Amelia, can you hear us yet?
I'm an ally to all protesters. Right. And as that, I don't know her name, right? That reporter was saying, well, they're not really distinguishing between protesters or the media. Meaning, and of course that tracks when you hear Donald Trump literally call press the enemy of the people, right? And look, I got problems with mainstream corporate news. You guys know this. However, that is not how you deal with it. That is not how you make the press better, but that's not their goal. The right wing, Trump specifically, just wants to destroy the press. Simply put, they want to end the freedom of the press. So they're going after cameramen. They're going after protesters who are peacefully assembled. That is their First Amendment rights. And all of this, again, is before Donald Trump emerged from his bunker to give that speech where he says he is an ally to protesters. I'm an ally. Really. Now, to make it worse, the whole purpose of that was to clear the streets for Donald Trump so that he could walk to St. John's Episcopal Church. Now, that is a church that sustained some fire damage during some protests the night before. And he basically went there in order to do this. He's even holding it upside down. I'm not kidding. You can see it. You can see it. He's holding it upside down. I mean, the greatest Bible knowledge. I'm the greatest Bible president ever. I'm the strongest and the bravest. Even though I was literally just in a bunker on Friday and I had the police clear out nonviolent protesters. Guy's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. He then, by the way, is quoted as saying that America is the, quote, greatest country in the world, and we're going to keep it that way. We're going to keep it that way if it kills you, is what he say, right? And I mean that literally, by the way. Understand that for Donald Trump, America is great. I mean, look at him. It's fantastic for him. Donald Trump's the only person that matters to Donald Trump, and he's literally sitting on the well, not literally, but he's basically sitting on the top of the world. He's the most powerful man in the world, and he gets to exercise his fascist tendencies with barely any pushback. And of course, he knows he's on top of the world, even though he loves to play the victim and he's very good at it. Because he's been playing victim his entire life. Oh my God, the media is so mean to me. Oh my God, everybody's so just nasty. Everybody's so terrible to me. I'm the world's biggest victim. No, the real victims are the people that you pushed off that bridge. And by the way, he's got Republicans in power that will defend him on everything. Everything he does. Doesn't matter. Right? Everything. Once in a while, I think it was a Classy Ben Sassy today comes out and says, oh, I think Donald Trump's kind of doing the wrong thing when he does these protests. Like he comes out of his shell every once in a while and then goes right back in. Right back in. I mean, and then every once in a while the Jeff Flake says, Donald Trump probably shouldn't be doing stuff like that. And then they disappear. Even Mitt Romney, every once in a while, will come out and do the same thing. Wag his little finger. And then just be like, well, nothing I can do. I'm going to go vote for Trump's war budget now. And don't think the Democrats are any better. Because they're not. The Democrats are pretending to be an opposition party that votes to give him more and more war powers. Yeah. So you're not really, They're not really much of an opposition party, are they? Where are the Democrats? Where's Nancy Pelosi? Oh, no, she made another strongly worded statement. Oh, and by the way, she also, and this is embarrassing as hell. If you're a Democrat, how are you not embarrassed by Nancy Pelosi coming out and holding a Bible, right, and pretending to read from it, saying, look how much better I am than Donald Trump. I'm much more civil. Oh, yes. Donald Trump, you're doing a naughty. You probably shouldn't do that. Strongly worded letters, ripping up papers. That's the kind of resistance that you get from the so-called the so-called opposition party, the Democratic Party, right? Where they're and you know what is the most frustrating thing too? She does that ridiculous Mick resistance bull crap where she goes, and yes, Slay Queen. Oh my God, you sure put him in his place while he's sending the riot police, the National Guard, after peaceful protesters. Mick resistance, peak shit lib. And I know I shouldn't swear, but like that's what it is. That's what they are. And Biden, what about Biden? I mentioned he said that, oh, you know, the cops shouldn't be shooting people with rubber bullets in the head. They should be shooting them in the knees. Or with normal bullets. They should just shoot them in the leg. That about sums up the Democratic Party's constant need to be just slightly better than the Republican Party. Just barely. You can't get too much better. How about you can say, hey, let's not shoot people at all. Or unless, you know, absolutely necessary, retrain the police so we don't have to shoot people. You think Biden's ever going to do? No, of course not. Biden paled around the segregation is eulogized Strom freaking Thurmond. Are you kidding me? He is not the man for the moment. Certainly not. No. We've got a fascist in office who is using force against peaceful protesters so that he could just get a damn photo op in front of a church. For a religion he barely believes in. He's a fake patriot. He's a fake Christian. He's a fake president, but a real danger. Jesus. What a disaster. Moving on. An Episcopal priest who was forcibly removed from a church is not happy with the president after he staged a photo op at her house of worship. So now this is Reverend Jeannie Gerbasi, and she was one of the peaceful protesters that was attacked by the National Guard in order to clear the road for Donald Trump so that he could go take his stupid photo op. Now, at the time, she was literally wearing her clerical garb when these jackbooted thugs, and that's what they are, charged into the crowd so that Trump could get that photo op at the church. Gerbasi, the rector at another St. John's Episcopal Church in Georgetown, had been there handing out water, snacks, and hand sanitizer to demonstrators before they were forced out. She said, quote, I was suddenly coughing from tear gas, which, by the way, tear gas is illegal, right? We heard those explosions and people would drop to the ground because you weren't sure what it was. And then adds, they turned holy ground into a battleground. Now, you want to call Donald Trump a Christian, right? You want to say America is based on Judeo-Christian values. No, not at all. In reality, we're actually looking more like the Holy Roman Empire, right? And that's right before it fell, if you can tell where we're at in the history, right? We've got rampant corruption. We've got idiot leaders. We've got greed. We got constant warfare. We've got lead in the drinking water even, crumbling infrastructure. We almost got it all. Just about. And again, add in corrupt, inept, garbage leadership. And that's where we're at. Now, back to Gerbasi. She said that she was, of course, deeply shaken by Monday evening's events. And then that just, however, furthered her resolve to begin fighting for against injustice. In fact, on Facebook, she said this: "I'm deeply offended on behalf of every protester, every Christian, the people of St. John's Lafayette Square, every decent person out there, and the Black Lives Matter medics who stayed with just a single box of supplies and a backpack, even when I got too scared and had to leave. I am okay, but I am now a force to be reckoned with." So congratulations, Donald Trump. You are radicalizing these Episcopal priests against you. I mean, like, talk about radicalization right there. Now she's ready to be a force to be reckoned with. This is what happens, man. This is what happens when you take reckless actions and provide no leadership ability whatsoever. And look, he's not a leader. He's an authoritarian. And I've said this from day one, that he's a danger to the country. He's a danger to freedom. He's a danger to liberty, actual freedom and liberty. Again, these people were exercising their constitutional rights to peaceably assemble under the First Amendment. But Trump, he gets his jackbooted thugs, as I said before, to plow right through these people, tear gas them, shoot rubber bullets at them. Also, he could clear them out so he could go to the church and stroke his ego by doing a photo op in front of a church. And then afterwards, by the way, he tweets out a tweet that basically pats himself in the back. Love this, right? You're going to love this. He said, "DC had no problems last night. Many arrests. Great job by all. Overwhelming force. Domination. Likewise, Minneapolis was great." And then in parentheses, he thanks himself. "Thank you, President Trump." Oh, he's patting himself on the back for this. See, he loves this. Absolutely loves this. Loves, and by the way, I saw a great tweet, and they're absolutely right. I wish I could give them credit for this. But they said Donald Trump is a weak man's idea of what a strong man is really like. And paraphrase that, right? Because I don't know if I got the exact saying 100% correct, but the gist is there. Absolutely. I mean, again, he went from hiding in his bunker to saying that the governors are weak and that we need total domination, hiding again behind his thugs in uniform. That's what he's doing. It's disgusting. It is absolutely disgusting. So now, there's a few responses to that, by the way, that I want to read. One person says, "The whole world watched you send military police to brutalize a peaceful civilian protest. The lowest moment of a presidency that has been nothing but one low moment after another." Another says, "I prefer presidents who don't tear gas their way to go hold up a Bible in front of a church." And by the way, he's holding it up upside down. Another one says, "Spoken like a true dictator. America stands for freedom of assembly and peaceful demonstration, not domination by the government against its citizens. That's North Korea. We all saw you tear gas nonviolent protesters 30 minutes before curfew last night. You're a thug." Yeah, you want to talk about thugs. But let's be honest, though. America has never been truly, truly free. I mean, wait. For decades, we've been crushing people using police forces, right? And one great example is Kent State, crushing Vietnam protests. That actually did end up with the deaths of several people. And so you can't say that, no, America stands for freedom of assembly. We never have. Never have. All that supposed freedom that we have is kind of illusory. It's not real. It doesn't really exist. Only if you're wealthy and powerful, then, of course, that's the situation where your freedom exists. Otherwise, no. And then one more. Sad president has to thank himself because nobody else will, because he's a failed president and a human, and failed human. All right. Now, let's be fair. There were people that absolutely loved this. And of course, unsurprisingly, they were members of the White House staff. In fact, according to Axios, one person was incredibly exuberant, telling friends the photograph of him holding a Bible in front of a church was an iconic moment for the president. Oh, how iconic is that? Now, others didn't agree. There was at least one person there, one senior White House official, that did tell Axios that when they saw the tear gas clearing the crowd for Trump to walk to the church with his entourage, he said, "I have never been more ashamed. I'm really honestly disgusted. I'm sick to my stomach." And they're all celebrating it. They're very, very proud of themselves. Well, like this unnamed person, right, who was in the White House, I'd really like to know who you are. I'd really like to know, maybe you should come out and say that publicly and actually take a stand for your life, for once in your life, against a corrupt administration and resign. Well, probably won't do that, but as far as people being very proud of themselves for this, of course they are. Fascists usually are very proud of themselves when they commit the acts against people that are actually wanting to hold them accountable. It's a sick group that we have in power right now. And this latest demonstration and everything that's going on, Trump's reaction to it, is just more proof of that. All right. We now have an official cause of death in the case of George Floyd. On Monday, the Hennepin County Medical Examiner Office and an autopsy commissioned by George Floyd's family have both come out on the same day. Actually, the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office report actually came out after the independent autopsy commissioned by the family had come out. So now first, I want to talk about the independent one, right? No, I'm sorry, not the independent one, but the one from Hennepin County. That's the medical examiner. So they said that cardiopulmonary arrest complicating law enforcement subdual, restraint, and neck compression was the official cause of death. So basically they're like, the police, we're just trying to subdue him. And it was George Floyd's fault for having these conditions that made it so that he died when you just had normal, pressure put on his neck. By the way, his knee, Derek Chauvin's knee, Officer Chauvin, was on the neck of George Floyd for at least 8 minutes, applying pressure. This is ridiculous. Get out of here. What a joke. What a joke, right? So the medical examiner's report says they found no physical findings that support a diagnosis of traumatic asphyxia or strangulation. They suggest that Floyd's existing health conditions, coronary artery disease and hypertensive heart disease, combined with being restrained by police and any, quote, potential intoxicants in his system, had contributed to his death. How unlucky for the cops that they just happened to restrain this man, who obviously had so many problems, and not their fault. I mean, boy, the cops just had a really unlucky situation here. Oh man, really? I mean, look, at the time, George Floyd, he was calling out for his mother. Now, what's important about that, and why I bring that up, is because Floyd's mother had been dead for 2 years, at least. So there was some serious mental distress going on, which would be consistent with lack of blood flow and oxygen to the brain, that he might be seeing his mother. I don't know. There's something going on here, right? And it's because, of course, you had that officer, the restricting that blood flow. to his brain because that officer had his knee literally in the guy's neck. So now we go to the independent autopsy here. They stated that asphyxiation from sustained pressure was the cause of Floyd's death. And this was done by Dr. Michael Baden and Dr. Alicia Wilson. They performed the autopsy and said there was, quote, neck and back compression that led to a lack of blood flow to the brain. They added that the weight on the back, handcuffs, and positioning were contributory factors because they impaired the ability of Mr. Floyd's diaphragm to function. So what you have here is, of course, confirmation that the actions of Derek Chauvin and the other officers that were directly responsible for George Floyd's death. There's no way around it. So that is two conflicting reports. And so now Baden and Wilson said also that it appears that Floyd had died at the scene, which is again, different than the official police report of the incident that said that when he went to the hospital, that's when he died from complications, right? But no, that's not what happened. So now Baden says, what we found is consistent with what people saw. There's no other health issue that could cause or contribute to this death. Police have this false impression that if you can talk, you can breathe. That's not true. Well, it wasn't true here. It wasn't true in the case of Eric Garner. Remember, Eric Garner's last words were, "I can't breathe," before he then was choked out and died from a police officer. Maybe, I don't know, maybe when someone says that I can't breathe, you might want to believe them and stop putting pressure on their neck, you know, or stop your illegal choke holds, any of that, right? Maybe you should stop that. I mean, it's not as if the three other officers that were there weren't restraining him. They were. And he was literally handcuffed on the ground for a non-violent offense. You got him, guys. You got him. You've used overwhelming force. Are you guys such cowards, the four of you, that you had to use overwhelming force? Because, well, what do you think, this guy's going to Hulk out and then destroy all of you? I don't know. But they had to have been so scared in order to do what they did to keep, again, nonviolent crime. This was over a counterfeit $20 bill. I've said before, a white person does it, you know, has a counterfeit 20 and tries to use it. Yes, they're going to get the cops called them. Are the cops going to treat them like that? Absolutely not. I know, because I was in that same situation. I've been there, and there are other people that have been in the same situation as well that have come into possession of a counterfeit $20 bill and had no idea. Now, maybe he did, but it doesn't mean that he was deserving of death. And so that's the problem. Now, the other thing here is maybe this was personal for Derek Chauvin. Look, I don't know for sure, but I did read accounts, and I'm guessing they're going to come out later if these accounts are true, that they worked at the same club together. So I don't know if there was like a personal vendetta here or what. It's something that people are going to definitely have to look into when it comes to the trial of Derek Chauvin, who has already been arrested and charged with third-degree murder and manslaughter. And so, but that first autopsy, come on, man, wow. Like, that's amazing. No blame on the cops whatsoever. Oh, it was just routine, what they were doing, and just happened to be, Floyd's fault for, being out of shape. His fault. Health conditions. What are you going to do? That's the first one. And the reason that they put that out, by the way, is these coroners work with the police every single day. They're friends. They're buddies. Maybe they even go, have beers with each other on the weekend, meet each other's families, have a barbecue, whatever, right? At the very least, they work together, and it helps to have a good relationship with the cop if you're a coroner, and a good relationship with the coroner if you're a cop. Goes both ways, right? You don't get that by working against each other. And so, of course, they have a vested interest in keeping that good relationship alive, even if it means, coming up with those results that make sure that you don't hold the police officers accountable. And that's the problem. And so I'm actually happy that we got this independent autopsy investigation, which was a real one, because in these cases, you can't trust the people that are close to the police, that work with the police. And so you can't trust that official narrative from the Hennepin County's medical examiner. I wish you could, but you really, really can't. Because as always, power sides with power, and power always does everything it can to defend itself. That's what we've learned here. All right. I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to come back. Thank some patrons. If there are any super chats, read those. And then we've got more stories coming up as well, including how white nationalists are impersonating Antifa, as well as the Boogaloo Boys. What are those? So very interesting story coming up next, as well as a company that fired a woman for getting coronavirus. All this and more coming up on the stream. Stay right here. Around the Nation. We'll see you in a couple minutes.
Uh-oh, I'm in trouble.
Welcome back to the show. Around the Nation right here, TWT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. All right, so first, I'm going to give a couple of shout-outs to some patrons. It's patreon.com/TWT Nation. I want to thank you guys, of course, for supporting the show. Thank you, Elena Valentino and Karen Brindle. So thank you to those two. You can sign up to become a patron and support the show at patreon.com/TYT Nation. All right. So channel memberships as well. So I want to thank a couple of channel members, Amadou Diallo and Rodney Nelson. So thank you for both of you for signing up to support us as well. All right. Let's go on. Let's move on to the Antifa story, because that's really interesting. All right. Here we go. It appears that white nationalists are beginning to impersonate members of Antifa. So now, one recent case of that happening actually happened on Twitter, which means, of course, Twitter had caught them. And I'm actually surprised that Twitter is starting to really crack down on this stuff, because I really didn't expect them to do that. Now, that's opposed to, of course, Mark Zuckerberg, who refuses to basically do anything. about online hatred. So now, a Twitter account claiming to belong to a national Antifa organization turns out has been found linked to a white nationalist group. You know why? You know how we know? Well, one giveaway is because there is no national Antifa organization. They're not a national group. Or I'm sorry, they're not like a tight-knit group. They don't have a national organization. And so now, according to a Twitter spokesperson, the account, which had the handle @Antifa US, had been calling for violence. And so that's why they were flagged by Twitter in the first place. So here's what they tweeted. And you've probably seen this going around Facebook, right? Because the virality has spread around the internet. They said, "Tonight's the night, comrades. Tonight we say F the city, and we move into the residential areas, the white hoods, and we take what's ours." Now that, of course, very ominous, right? Oh my gosh. Oh no, they're coming into the white areas. Oh no, we got to do something, right? Well, that's exactly what you would say if you wanted to make sure that Black Lives Matter and Antifa have no white allies. That's what you would do. Now, the thing is, again, Antifa's not a cohesive group. It's anybody who's an anti-fascist. It's not an organization at all. And so their entire purpose is just people who are fed up with seeing fascists march through the streets, right? And they will confront them with violence, yes, and they will confront them with milkshakes. That's what they'll do. Now, if you were to take that tweet at face value, which I would urge you not to, right, and not read into it. So say maybe you're like not even a right wing, somebody who's just not plugged into news and so doesn't really know a lot about the situation. You'll see something like that and you see, oh my gosh, it's those Antifa I keep hearing about from Donald Trump, from President Trump. I hear they're dangerous. Oh my gosh, they're threatening to come into the white neighborhoods now. Oh no, that's not good. But again, if you're unaware, here's the reality that would be uncharacteristic of what we've seen from Antifa, even Black Bloc, right? Which, yes, they have done some property destruction, and they have went after the people who are basically neo-Nazis, right? That's what they do. They go after the neo-Nazis. And so now the group that was actually behind this account was found to be a white nationalist group called Identity Evropa. So, yeah. Now, Twitter removed that account as they said that it violated the company's platform's manipulation and spam policy, specifically the creation of fake accounts. So understand that this is just part of what they're trying to do. They're trying to spread fear and misinformation on social media. And of course, like President Trump, they're targeting Antifa, right? And because they're a really good boogeyman for the right wing. They just really are. The real danger, however, of course, is the far right. People, yes, again, people in Antifa do use violence. Understand, right? I'm not saying that they're nonviolent. No, they're the opposite of nonviolent. They are violent. They go and they punch Nazis. That's what they do. And they're proud of that fact, right? But the far right has groups that have went far beyond that. They also use violence, but oftentimes it's deadly violence. They've killed people. I can't. What's the Antifa body count at so far? Oh, right. Nothing. Zero. No. They've killed no people. They don't do that. But these right-wing groups, they do that. They do kill people. And yet, one is being considered to be a terror group by the president, while the other one seems to enjoy allies in the White House, or at least friends, or at least, they're good people on both sides. Think about that for a second. Now, there's more. There are reports of white nationalist groups using the protests to, unsurprisingly, incite racial tensions in the country. Okay. According to the Southern Poverty Law Center, white nationalists, white supremacists, right-wing militias gun rights extremists, Proud Boys, and other far-right extremists are using the Floyd protests to foment confusion, animosity against legitimate demonstrators, and ultimately civil war. And they have adopted a code word for this, Boogaloo. That is a reference for a race war. So understand what this is about. They call themselves the Boogaloo Boys, and they have been infiltrating recent protests over George Floyd, the killing of George Floyd, taking advantage of crowds and emotionally charged atmosphere to instigate chaos and disruption in an attempt to discredit the Black Lives Matter movement and in order to further their goal of a race-based civil war. So let me give you some of the different reports about the Boogaloo Boys. Again, this is from the Southern Poverty Law Center. Boogaloo Boys, individuals associated with the online community characterized by calls for civil strife and ownership of firearms and tactical gear. By the way, ownership of firearms is not a bad thing. And so let me just clear that up. But they have called for using them against fellow Americans, which is bad, right? Civil strife and an armed revolution online. And they've been doing so at public rallies for months. NPR reports on this, that their fringe movements, including right-wing militias and patriot groups, have begun using the word Boogaloo on social media as a thinly veiled code for a race-based or civil war. The Anti-Defamation League is reporting that a variety of extremist and fringe movements and subcultures adopted the word Boogaloo as shorthand for a future civil war, from militia groups to white supremacists, extremists on a range of online platforms talk about and even sometimes anticipate the Boogaloo. So understand, this is dangerous stuff. Totally dangerous stuff. In fact, according to NBC, members of the Boogaloo movement, a loosely knit online collective of firearm enthusiasts, were seen at protests in states including Minnesota and Texas and in Philadelphia. In private Facebook groups and chat rooms, several of which have tens of thousands of members have called for looting police precincts and burning down government buildings. Now, that doesn't mean that they're responsible for the entirety of the destruction that we have seen of property during these protests. No, I'm sure that there are protesters out there that were smashing things too. Like, understand, right? It's not a deflection. It's not to say, oh, no, they're all, perfect, and don't cause any sort of destruction. No. What I'm saying is that there are these people as well, right? There is a concerted effort among people on the right to make as many of the protests, which have been mostly peaceful, or at least started that way, into violent, destructive protests in order to further their own political goals and not to further justice. And so it's always good to watch out for fake accounts, to watch out for provocateurs. People, for example, look, I've been hearing news accounts of pallets of bricks just appearing, right, before protests. Like, come on, man. Like, obvious bait is obvious, right? And so you got to watch out for those things and those people who are going to try to weaponize your protests. And more importantly, make sure to weaponize the police against you. So just be careful. That's all I can say. All right. Super chat by Hiroshi Loves You says, please show that new video where cops secretly prepare bricks for the false flag. I don't have that video, or I probably would show that. And so there's that. All right. Moving on. An embroiderer in Florida is suing her former employer for firing her after she came off leave for coronavirus. And by the way, they also made sure to not pay her to actually pay her sick leave that she had earned. Now, they fired her via text message the day before she was supposed to return for work. So now the suit was filed Tuesday by Tracy Graham, and it's against a place called Barrier Technologies. And what's important about this is not only is it, of course, workplaces being awful, right? For one, but also this is over the sick leave provisions in the Family First Coronavirus Relief Act. Now, that's one of the stimulus bills that was passed back in March to deal with the pandemic. And in it, they're supposed to guarantee sick leave. In fact, under the law, employers with fewer than 500 workers are required to provide up to 80 hours of paid sick time to anyone diagnosed with COVID-19 or are under doctor's orders to quarantine or isolate because of the disease. So now that should have applied to barrier technologies, right? So now they're a small manufacturer in Florida. They have 26 employees, and they make gear like vests, gloves, and aprons to protect medical professionals from radiation like x-rays and other machines. Now, Graham was working for this company, was making $14 an hour to embroider logos and things onto the gear. She, of course, got sick. She consulted a doctor via telemedicine as she didn't have a car to go in and actually get a test. And honestly, even if she had a vehicle, there was no guarantee that she was actually going to get a COVID-19 test. And so what she did is she did the smart thing. She consulted the doctor via telemedicine, and she said, look, I believe I might have the symptoms for coronavirus. What should I do? The doctor said, well, we can't test you. You can't physically be here. And so if you think you got coronavirus, then you should self-quarantine for at least 7 days. And so that's what she did. And she had forwarded the doctor's letter, according to the lawsuit, to Barrier's general email address and received an acknowledgement from Barrier's vice president of sales. The company, however, did not offer to pay sick leave and did not want to bring her back to work. Now, the suit filed in district court in southern Florida, Graham says that the company owes her sick pay for the time that she was at home, and she says that her firing was unlawful. And so, look, I would agree with that. There was no reason to let her go, or at least not pay her the sick leave, right? If you're going to let her go for, as you're going to see, that they're going to blame this on financial reasons, well, then you should at least do the sick leave that you promised her under the law. So now, her one of the lawyers at this law firm called Wigder, who's representing Graham, along with Brian Arbit. This is Parisis J. Philopatos. Probably butchered his name, but that's okay. He said, they recruited her, and the minute she happens to fall victim to the pandemic, they kicked her out the door. That just seems horrible. Well, I mean, yeah, that's it. I mean, yes, it seems horrible because it is horrible. Now, however, the company, they're like, oh, no, that's not how it happened. Here's what happened. We don't feel like we did anything wrong. The company's owner and managing director, Mark Lichtman, told HuffPost. He said that Graham never told the company that she had COVID symptoms, which in the lawsuit, she said she had forwarded the doctor's letter saying that she believes that she has COVID. But he says, oh, no, we never got that. And, well, when asked about the reason that she was fired, they said, well, business is slow. What are you going to do? I mean, business was slow. I mean, look, we're getting less business due to coronavirus. And that's, by the way, why we had to take out a small business loan through the Paycheck Protection Program in order to just keep ourselves afloat. But we had to get rid of somebody. Well, no, wait a minute here. Isn't the entire reason for the Paycheck Protection Program's existence to make sure that you reward companies for keeping people on payroll by making it so that you don't have to pay back the loan if you keep people on payroll? I mean, again, I thought that was the point, right? But Glickman says, oh, we didn't have a choice. It had nothing to do with her ailment that we didn't know about. No, our business was down significantly. We were going to have to let her go. We weren't happy about this. And what luck. She just happened to not show up for a week, and we didn't know why, so we were able to get rid of her. Lucky break. Real lucky break. No, I don't believe it. Look, Employers use dirty tricks like this all the time. Oh, no, they never told me what was going on, so we just assumed that was no call, no show. Even though they had her phone number, and they even claim, oh, we called her a bunch of times. She didn't pick up. Now, this is a person who was making $14 an hour. She says, I loved doing this job. I enjoyed it. I was able to work from, like do most of my work from home, right? I was able to sew these things and do my embroidery, and I enjoyed it, and I was making good money doing it. Why would I want to give that up? So now the company, again, fired her via text message, and she responded to the text message, right? And so that's the day she was set to return to work, just the day before. Yeah. Now, she was lucky, of course, that her COVID symptoms were mild, and she was okay to go back. But, of course, unfortunately, as I mentioned, they fired her. They got rid of her and blame it all on her. Of course they did. So now the sucky thing is about this entire situation is it's very likely that this company could get away with it. Why is that? It's because the protections for workers, especially in Florida, are horrendous. There are almost no protections. And even in this bill, which allows for this sick leave, those protections are also not very good, right? As HuffPost explains, the sick leave provisions in the coronavirus relief law were originally intended to cover the entire workforce and enable people to stay home and avoid infecting others with coronavirus. Yet the provisions, as they were making their way through Congress, were whittled down by the White House and Senate Republicans at the behest of big business and ended up only covering a small fraction of Americans. In fact, it's estimated that over 3/4 of the workforce would be left out if every company were to take the available exemptions carved into that bill. The Department of Labor also weakened the law by making it easier for companies, particularly healthcare providers, to exempt themselves from providing sick leave altogether. So it is very likely that this company is going to be able to get away with it and not at least pay this woman the sick leave that they owe her under the law. Now, she told HuffPost that when she received that firing notice via text, she was flabbergasted. The only reply she could think of was a message about the pineapple-shaped clock she kept at her workstation. So now, look, earlier, for some reason I mentioned, I was like, oh, she worked from home. No, she didn't. She actually did go into work. And so what happened is that she had her, pineapple clock, right? And that's the only thing she could think of. Like, okay, can I at least get my clock? Like, if you're going to fire me like that? And then afterwards, when it kind of settled in, she then thought, well, now wait a minute here. This is wrong. I'm going to go lawyer up. And so that's exactly what she did. And so, look, now she's without a job, unfortunately. She's without paid leave. So she doesn't have that. And of course, as you guys know, people still got bills. They didn't freeze rents. They didn't freeze mortgages. Things are still as expensive as they were before. In fact, some actually grocery stores, I looked at some numbers, and some grocery stores are actually charging more, up to 40% more, due to the pandemic, due to some of these shortages. And so you've got that economic hurt on top of losing your job. And also, I mean, it's Florida, so she's trying to apply for unemployment benefits and still can't even get through. And that is the situation for still millions of people in Florida, even now. And of course, it's because Florida's system is a disaster. I did a story on that, guys, a few weeks back, of how the system was set up by Rick Scott, who was a former governor, to fail. It was set up to fail, to make sure that as few people as possible were able to sign up and get benefits. And, well, on that front, mission accomplished. It has performed beautifully during one of the worst economic crises of at least my life. possibly the century. And now she is managing to get by, and she's leaning on her sons. And that's unfortunate because she says, look, that really does hurt. She doesn't want to be a burden on her sons. She says she wants to work. She says, I don't know how to not work. And has been spending her days making masks for people, again, because she does embroidery. And she makes masks and watches Disney movies to get by. And so, oh, by the way, she also received her stimulus check, which was only $1,200, which, as I've mentioned before in the show, is not nearly enough to live on. So what a disastrous situation to be left in, because your employer, I mean, just didn't want to pay you extra additional pay for being sick. I mean, that's what this is. And that's the situation that we're in. And it is disgusting for this company to go and take these Paycheck Protection Program loan money and do the opposite of what it's supposed to do. But unfortunately, with our system as messed up as it is, and with little to no oversight over these systems and in these, these programs, in these, I don't know, gigantic bailouts for corporations that we've had, don't be surprised when regular people are left out and screwed over by our system that favors these big corporate bad actors. It really is kind of super, super sad, guys. All right. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Share the video. Share the stream. Share our other clips as well. Sign up to become a patron. Patreon.com/TYTNation if you like what we do here and if you want to support independent progressive media. With that, thank you. Love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. Stay safe. Wash your hands. And, again, make sure to stay. If you're going to go out to protest, please be careful. Please be cautious. And please be safe. That's all I can say. We'll see you guys later. Around the nation.
Please clap.
Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. Wait, you're getting nervous, man. Mike Pounds.
You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.